Yes, I guess this is 5S and an E. And the E rhymes with T, and the T stands for T jump. Tom, how you doing?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it. How are you doing?
I've never been better in my life.
Really, given all the technical issues we just had, I imagine the stress is just mounting for both of us.
T jump, I'm a terrible liar. I've already started. But what can I say? Look,
How very Christian of you.
This is our first time being on a show together. I have seen you on air a few times. I don't know if you've had a chance to see me, but you have talked to my former co-host once or twice, Dale Glover.
Yep.
Yeah, I used to enjoy talking to Dale every week. Those were interesting times, early days for skeptics and seekers. I wanted to ask you a question about yourself. This may be something that you say every week, and maybe a question you answer every week to your followers, and I just miss it. But um, what is your experience with Christianity before doing this show? Were you a Christian in the past? Were you raised Christian? Have you never been Christian? Any other religion? Tell me a little bit about Mr. Jump for all of those people in the audience who may not know who you are.
Mr. Jump. Is my father in the background somewhere? What is Mr. Jump? Oh my god.
I'm sorry, Mr. T.
That's better. Just call me Mr. Chair. That's a good one. I like the chair. Yeah, so I was Christian. I was brought up in a Christian household. Went to Catholic grade school, Catholic high school, mass 3 times a week. Very unpleasant. But I lost my faith sometime around 17 or 18. I had major depression for most of my life and prayed every day and every night for help from the all-powerful, all-loving Sky Daddy, who did not do anything to help. And I eventually just stopped being able to believe there was such a thing because it didn't do anything. So I just felt like I was praying to a milk carton.
I see. Did you try praying to a milk carton just as a control?
No, I was not very scientifically minded back then. It was more just desperation, try to avoid or solve the depression. So I had not attempted to pray to the milk carton.
Well, for what it's worth, I believe it's milk jugs that get the result. Anyway, the milk cartons don't touch it. They're not very popular.
Sounds like you're biased against the milk cartons. I don't know.
I've tried some things. I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Just gonna clip that section out and make that into its own little thing.
I feel like that's gonna be somebody's ringtone. So I know that you have got quite the audience and quite the fan base. I count myself as part of the fan base, but a lot of them may not know who I am, and so unintentionally plugging Skeptics and Seekers Sunday Sermon. That's an outgrowth from Skeptics and Seekers. That's a show that I did. Dale Glover being a co-host, so some of your viewers might remember him and may have enjoyed your discussions with him as I did. I am a former Christian, a former preacher. I've been a leader in 3 different denominations, and I didn't come out until I was around 40, and I'm 52 now. So most of my life has been in Christianity. And the thing that something that people always ask, and I can't begin to answer it appropriately. It's a different answer every time. But what made me come out? It's there's no one thing. It's boiling frog type situation. So I can try to think back to the first issue that didn't seem right, but it's hard to identify the straw that broke the camel's back. But I can tell you that prayer was a big issue, and I recall having a lot of trouble with that as my faith started to really take a beating. I didn't know how to pray. Was I supposed to pray thy will be done or my will be done? You know, do I pray with confidence that the Lord will answer my prayer and grant my request, or do I pray with humility and, you know, whatever you want to do, don't, I'm sorry, I don't mean to bother you. You know, what exactly is the right posture for that? And the fact is, no kind of prayer that I ever tried had any type of success. And even when I didn't pray for things, I couldn't, I had no spiritual confirmation that my prayers were ever leaving my body and going someplace else. So at some point, I stopped publicly praying because I used to pray a lot in church, and people used to ask me to pray. You know, I'd visit a church. You know, would you like to say the opening prayer or this prayer for this? And I just stopped doing it. I stopped praying for people. I stopped just any kind of prayer that wasn't private because it just seemed like hypocrisy to me because I couldn't figure out how to do it. What I was supposed to do with it. So that was one of the things that accelerated my trip out the door. Did you how did you deal with prayer? I know you were like 17 or 18, but what was how did you relate to prayer?
Well, yeah, for me, it was a cry for help. So I had major depression, suicidal major depression, real bad most of my life. And so for me, prayer was a lifeline that was hope that I could overcome it. This connection to this all powerful being who's perfectly loving was something that gave me hope for the future, that I would be able to get over the pain I was in. And so for me, it was a cry for help that was never answered.
Well, we could say that part of the prayer was answered because you're still here. So thank God. Don't hit me. So we have a topic of conversation. I know that you're used to talking to Christians. I will put my Christian hat on half my head today, and I will wear my atheist hat on the other head, looking kind of like a dunce hat when you put it all together. But I want to talk to you about talking to people because both you and I are talkers. You might even say we're professional talkers. And we talk to people who disagree with us a lot. I talk to people who disagree with me over on Skeptics and Seekers, over on Red Letters, which I'll plug later. I talk to people who mostly agree to me, but you know, I still get a lot of pushback there. I've had debates. I've been on Unbelievable twice. Are you familiar with the Unbelievable?
Yes,
radio?
I'm jealous. I want to be on there very badly. I want to debate some professors on there. Give me William Lane Craig versus me on Unbelievable. That'd be great.
Justin, just write him.
I have. I've emailed him like 6 times.
Oh, that this is hard to believe because I'm a nobody. I've been on twice, so it may have helped that when Justin wrote his book a few years ago, I kind of cobbled together a team along with a friend of mine, and we wrote a response book, and got us on the show. I'm not entirely sure what got me on the show the second time, but I had a chance to debate the resurrection with Jonathan McClatchy, and that was nice.
I've debated him twice. Both were very entertaining.
I didn't enjoy my time with Jonathan as much as I had hoped.
I took great pleasure in my second debate and just eviscerating him in every way I could.
I would like to debate him again, because yes, so let's talk about that. In fact, what you just said there is a good jumping off point into the topic. Yeah, there are times when I get on the mic with someone and I just want to rip them a new one. And I'll give you my greatest shame on air. It was when I had a interview / conversation / debate with Michael Brown. Have you had a chance to talk to Michael Brown?
Yeah, I had him on my show. We had a really nice conversation for an hour or something.
I despise Michael Brown. I mean, I wish I could say that past tense, but I still despise Michael Brown. I I I I shouldn't have accepted the interview. I shouldn't have done it because I knew how I felt, and I wasn't entirely sure that I would be able to keep my emotions in check and beat back some of my worst conversational impulses. And at the time, this was, I want to say it was around 2000, sometime in the Trump administration. And Michael Brown had switched from being anti-Trump to hard pro-Trump. And he had put out some videos uh, about Jews and Jesus. He's a messianic Jewish kind of person. So there were some things that were very hot button at the time, and he wanted to be on our show. Dale knew him, and he wanted to be on the show. He wanted a chance to kind of give his side of things because his reputation had maybe taken a little bit of a beating at that time, and I wanted to be fair and let him give his side and have some conversation, maybe a little bit of pushback, but just get to know the man. And so I tried to push back all of the things that I knew that I didn't like, and just get into a conversation. And it didn't take long before it was very apparent that I didn't like him and he didn't like me, and we just growled at each other for an hour. And I hope that no one ever finds that show. I don't take anything down. It's over there on Skeptics and Seekers. If someone wants to find it, not my finest hour, not his finest hour. And so I learned some things about myself and about my ability to talk to Christians. I thought that I was pretty good at it. I had some pretty high profile interviews by that time. And for the most part, they were really good. They were great. And I was feeling good about myself, very professional. I had, brought myself to this point from nothing. Look at me. And then it just went to hell. And I realized, oh no, I'm not a particularly good person at all. And I'm not a particularly good conversationalist. And I need to learn how to talk to Christians. And I realized, of course, Christians also need to learn how to talk to people like me. It's very easy for both sides to kind of trigger the other side. And before you know it, people are talking past each other. And the debate really heats up and the audience really gets into it because, they get in there for that three-ring circus. And maybe 5% of them actually want to hear the discussion, but it's like watching a car race. You really want to see the wreck. No one watches hockey to see the puck go to the net. They watch hockey to see the fight. That's why they go. I've got a feeling that that's a lot of the audience for Christian atheist debates. And so I realized I feed into that impulse. And when the Christian is there and they're feeding into their audience, I'm feeding in my audience, and then we just have this brawl, nothing productive is getting done, and no one covers themselves in glory, and no good ideas are ever truly advanced on either side. And so I just wanted to dissect this art of conversation between Christians and atheists and see if we can identify some of the places where that conversation goes desperately wrong. Now, I'm coming in with confession. All right, I'm the worst of offenders. Do you feel like you have anything to confess, Tom, or are you just going to revel in my confession?
Well, so my interpretation is slightly different. Like, I think those kinds of conversations can be very productive, not only for the audience, but for the speakers as well. I think it's up to the individual to find value in those things, but there is value to be found in those kinds of conversations. Like you mentioned that people revel in the car wreck and the train wreck. My most viewed videos are all screaming matches. When you say you're the worst offender, I highly doubt if we were to compare your interview with Michael Brown and mine with Godless Girl, that yours would be considered the greater offender in this case. Or mine with Jack Ainstrike, where I'm literally just shouting everyone to shut up and using many curse words. Uh, except, so for me, I don't see those as bad. I don't see those as unproductive. I see those as very productive. I think that the experience of going through conversations in those kinds of heated situations and trying to learn how to engage and still be productive while being in those conversations is a very valuable skill set that I am happy to have. So I enjoy those kinds of experiences, or I take value from them at least. And so I don't see them as a problem. I don't see them as something to confess having done. I see them as something I'm more proud of in a way, or something I'm glad to have done. And so I don't see those as an issue. I see those as a learning opportunity.
Okay. Well, I certainly used to view it more like that. I mean, I call conversation a blood sport. It's an arena. It's the pit. Grab your mace. Let's do this. I mean, let's shake hands and then kill each other, and then have a drink afterwards. This is part of my personality. I played sports. I was an athlete growing up, and I'm a rough and tumble kind of guy. So this is true in the mental uh, arena as well. And conversation is just a great exercise of the mind. It's a little bit like speed chest in boxing. So I get that, and it is entertaining, but I come to believe that maybe those are not my better angels that are, that are entertained in that way. Because the other thing that I realized, and this was an interview by a person whose name I don't even recall. He was from Canada, and he wanted to come on the show, and I didn't feel like he was ready to come on the show, but he wanted to come on the show. He had written into Unbelievable. Justin Briley had read his letter, and he wanted to get on shows, and he had some things to say. And so I wrote him and I said, look, you can come on to Skeptics and Seekers. And he came on, and he was so unprepared, and I beat him senselessly. And I kind of enjoyed it at the time, but after listening, I didn't enjoy it. I realized the thing that is so easy to forget, that the person on the other side of the mic is a person. They're not just an athlete, and they're not all, as mentally prepared and as tough. And I think that we sometimes forget about the other person's humanity. And I have tried so very hard to remember that as I debate a person now. I'm still not very successful, because there are still things that trigger me, and there are things that I say that I know triggers the other side. And so, whereas having a shouting match, I don't actually have a problem with a shouting match. It's when we can no longer think clearly and say productive things that I think the conversation gets bad. So there are some things. How would you like me to start? I've got a few things that Christians say that I would really like Christians to stop saying. And so, for any Christians in our audiences that are listening, I want to tell you how not to talk to us. Okay. If you want to have a really good conversation, if you want to have a shouting match, then this is, in fact, how to talk to us. If you are honest about wanting a good, productive exchange of ideas, this is how not to talk to us. And then I have the same thing for atheists and the poison pills that we tend to insert in conversations. Which would you like to start with first? Our evils or theirs?
Let's start with the atheist. Self-criticism is usually most productive.
Okay, good. Because if there are any Christians listening and I started with the Christians, they would just go away. so, so let me go. Let me flip down here in my notes. This is pretty easy, pretty straightforward for me because I use these things all the time, even now. In fact, I sent you a write up. My blog post has this. I'm not going to edit my blog post, but I actually say some of the things in the blog post that I identify as poison pills. I'm trying to not say. That's how ingrained it is in me. That even after identifying these things, I still find it difficult to not think in these terms. Maybe you can help me out. Magic. When we're talking to a Christian about miracles, I some 5 or 6 years ago, I just started calling it magic. I just started saying magic whenever they would say miracles. And why I don't, because I was trying to think of, well, what would a secular word for miracles be? Because we don't believe in miracles. A miracle is something that Christian generally defines as an act of their God, a special act of their God. And some Christians will go further and define that as something that God does that contravenes nature. But in all cases, miracle requires a God. There is a very, very generic term, way of using miracle, like the miracle of birth or something like that, that doesn't necessarily invoke a God. But by and large, when Christians use miracle, they're thinking about a God. Well, I don't. So for me, the closest thing is magic. Except I know from when I was a Christian how viscerally offensive that is. For the Christian, that is a terribly offensive word because the Christian, I say the Christian, there's so many kinds. Most of the kinds that I know of think about magic as a demonic power or power of the supernatural from other than their God. And so it's a very offensive notion because they do not believe in gods other than their gods. And they do not take kindly to having their God's power referred to as something that they think of as demonic. So, I've also heard a lot of other atheists use this word too when talking to Christians about, the ridiculousness of miracles. And I think that that's one of those poison pills. Sometimes we insert it by accident, sometimes on purpose. But whatever you think of it, it tends to short circuit the Christian brain in a way that many of them just can't help. And I do it, and I know better. I know exactly what I'm doing when I use it. But I still don't. I don't know of another way. I'm trying to retrain myself to just refer to the supernatural that they're talking about as supernatural. But that's not how Christians want to talk about it. What say you?
Yeah, I think that there are many trigger words that if certain people in a certain ideology hear those trigger words, they get offended, and that makes them incapacitated intellectually. I agree there. And so I think the trick is to find a way to express the term in a more intellectual argument style that they don't take as offensive. So the magic thing, I think, is a very good analogy. I don't think it's just an insult. I think it is a very valid point to compare miracles to, but in order to express that point without insulting, what I normally do is I put it into a list. So I'd say, for example, historical claims are not evidence of anything that doesn't have an empirical basis, such as miracles, magic, mythical creatures, the paranormal, supernatural, UFOs. And now, because it's in a list, a class of things, um, it's harder to take that as an insult. But when you compare it to something directly like magic, they can they take that as a parody or an insult to their god position. Whereas if you put it into a list of things, it's
It's a
far
parody.
less offensive.
Yeah, it is a parody. It is an insult. When I first started using it, I started using it in that way because I felt like they were insulting me by continuing to express this thing that they know that I didn't believe in. So I just wanted to turn the tables in a kind of a nasty way, and that's what I started doing. Is now it's hard for me to break myself of that habit.
Yeah. So number one, don't use it as an insult. Use it as a valid argument instead. That would be the trick. So if you're actually deliberately insulting them, I think it makes sense that they may take a little offense to that. But if you're trying to use it in an argument sense to not offend them, just put it into a list. So if you put it into a list, it's less offensive. Unless your list is unicorn, sky daddy, leprechaun, then they're still offended by that.
Sure. I mean, look, their God's miracles are no more impressive to me than Harry Potter's magic. So it is
I
a
take offense to that. Harry Potter is great. Like there's the magic luck stuff, which is awesome. The wizarding things in Harry Potter are amazing, much better than the Bible.
uh, the Bible is not a very good book of magic. So some of the apocryphal stuff, the Acts of Paul and Thecla. Now that's got some magic. But at any rate, yeah, I'm not here to recommend other false religious material. I appreciate that insight, though. I'm going to try to do that because one of the questions that I ask in my write up is, should we avoid comparisons altogether? And I don't think that we should. And I don't think that I could do that anyway. But
That would make conversation very difficult. I'm not going to compare anything you say to any other thing.
right. Right. And maybe with some conversation with the Christian up front, we're going to talk about miracles. I use this word, as opposed to miracles or the supernatural. Is that okay with you? Perhaps that would help lessen the blow, and maybe together we could negotiate, some of the words that we use. Let me jump into another one that's become really apparent to me in the last couple of years. Christians believe. So, having been a Christian, I often draw on my own experience as a Christian. I can say, here's what Christians believe about blank. Well, I'm often pulling from my own old sermons or sermons that I've heard from the denominational background that I come from, and often it's from some videos that I've listened to. Skeptics and Seekers Sunday Sermon is me actually playing a sermon every week and commenting on it, kind of a Pine Creek style. So I listen to a lot of sermons even today, and I talk about what Christians believe. But every time I do that, inevitably, someone will say, "Not all Christians believe that. I don't believe that." Okay. Yeah, but Christians believe that Jesus was born of a virgin. Oh no, they don't. That's no. Almost no matter what you put in front of Christians believe, there are some Christians who are going to say, "No, we don't." So rather than do that, and this is not something I do intentionally, but it is something that I still do, and it kind of puts the back up of a lot of people. Christians believe that homosexuals are in sin and should go to hell. Well, according to recent surveys, more Christians believe that homosexuality is okay than not. So you can't say that kind of thing anymore because the landscape is always changing and it's always moving. And so I just think as atheist communicators that are speaking about points of faith, we might learn to say, many Christians believe, and then maybe inquire of our interlocutor to see what they believe on the matter, rather than a blanket assumption about what Christians believe. That pretty much always gets us into trouble. Thoughts?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's two things there. If you mean when you say Christians believe and then you're applying it to all of Christianity, clearly that's going to be a problem. Like if you said any group of people all believe or all does this one thing, that's where like most racist statements begin. All of this group does this. But if you just mean it in the general sense, like Christians, as in there is some class of Christians who believe this one thing, that's perfectly fine if that's your intent and they're just misunderstanding you. Um, but it's definitely better to clarify that you mean some Christians believe, or this denomination, or some group. Definitely better. But I think that it's a problem on both ends, where some people will say Christians believe, meaning some Christians, but other people will interpret that to mean, well, not all Christians say that. Like clearly, a lot of people don't mean it in that sense. They're not literally saying all Christians believe. That's not usually the goal of when you say some denomination believes something. So I think that those choice words are just very confusing and can be interpreted in many different ways. And so I just usually just ignore what most people believe and just ask what the person I'm talking to believes and don't really care about anything else for the sake of the argument.
Yeah, that's the thing that I need to learn how to do more, just to ask the person that I'm talking to. If I'm not talking to someone, though, if I'm doing a solo show, I'm speaking generically, of course, there's no one to ask. And I always get the comments. No, Christians don't believe that. The real Christians don't believe in that, or not all Christians don't believe in that, or I don't believe in that, and they feel insulted. They really do. So, just on, I'm going to jump to the other side for just a moment, though, and say that Christians are very bad at this too. In fact, I think they're worse. So, what Christians hear you saying when you say Christians believe, even if you say something that they happen to believe, what they hear you saying is they hear you defining Christianity for them. And that's not what I intend to do. That there are so many ideas of Christianity. I can talk about the Christianity that I understand as Christianity, but they hear you trying to define Christianity for them, and they get upset with that. Well, guess what? One of the things that really gets me off at the beginning of a conversation, you are going to have an argument if you start with this, is to define what atheism is for me. If you start telling me what I have to believe, as an atheist, we're not going to recover from that. So, I hate having my beliefs defined by a label as much as they hate having their beliefs defined by a label. So just a thought there. Have you gotten used to it? Have you gotten used to Christians telling you what you should and shouldn't believe as an atheist?
It doesn't normally bother me. So I like to take the devil's advocate position. So if they say something like atheism is a religion, I'm going to be like, okay, we'll take that. It's better than yours. I'll start listing the reasons of how atheism as a religion, the religion of atheism, our doctrines are more moral, our people are more moral, our congregations are more moral, we help more people, we do more good, we don't have any pedo priests. And so I'll take whatever they say and just adopt it, and then show that even if we take what they say at face value, it's still better than theirs.
Well, that's a good approach. You may be a better human being than I am, but it's the type of thing that bugs me is when they tell me that I am arguing a positive position that there is no God, and that I am not an atheist if that's not what I'm arguing. And what I might be arguing, in fact, what I'm almost always arguing, is I am not convinced by the God claims you are making. And those are not the same thing. And that's when they will tell me, no, if you're an atheist, then you are arguing that there is no God positively. And then I will tell them to fuck themselves.
Well, that's another good example. So I also used to take the lack of belief position. Atheism is just, I'm not convinced by your evidence. You don't have any good evidence. And when they started to say, well, no, atheism is rejecting that God exists, like, all right, fine, your God doesn't exist. I'll take the strong position, and I'll just say it's rational to believe that anything that doesn't have evidence is a figment of human imagination. So I'm rational in thinking your God doesn't exist, just like I'm rational in believing Santa Claus doesn't exist. And so I'll take the strong position. I'll just grab it, like, all right, fine. If you want me to take that position, I'll take it, and I'll still win.
You are a fun guy. Look, I take the strong position sometimes, but I take it when I want to take it. I'll never take it when a Christian tries to force me to take it because they can't define what I am arguing. That's the thing. I am telling you what I am arguing. And you are going to say, well, you're not an atheist. Well, screw you. You're not a Christian. I can make an easier case that you're not a Christian than you can that I'm not an atheist. But and then I proceed to do so. Imaginary friend, this is easy. Whenever we say kind of pejorative things about their, imaginary friend, shithole God, they take offense to that. I own Red Letters. Red Letters, a closer look at the worst practical and moral teachings in history. That's my latest book. And that's the project of my Red Letters Patreon. Patreon.com/red letters. Patreon.com/ this is not a plug. Patreon.com/red letters. Be sure to go there, grab a free copy of the ebook. You're gonna love it. Join the community.
No, give me money. Don't give him money. Give me money. Not a plug.
Give him money too. I mean, look at that jaw. You should give him money. Yeah. Anyway, where was I?
My chair needs some more cushion. Add to the chair fund.
That chair is cushioned with $100 bills, people. So often on Red Letters, I will say something like, Jesus was a fucking dick, after making a point to prove it. But
I go with Jesus drowned babies, so I don't know which one's worse.
But when we say things in a conversation that's not meant to be that incendiary, and we start calling their God their imaginary friend, then we are being demeaning, not just to their God, we're being demeaning to them. And that is a thing that you may not realize when you're doing it, but that is something that they take personally, because you're calling them a child or infantile or something like that. And you're also talking about their best friend, imaginary or not. It's kind of like saying, oh, and by the way, your wife is fat and ugly. There's a piece of the brain that just explodes. They can't recover from that, and they're not going to recover from that. And even if they don't start yelling and screaming, a piece of their brain just got broken, and we might take a higher road and find some other way to express the fact that we don't believe that their goddamn imaginary friend exists.
Or you could go the British aristocracy route and just say it in such a subtle way that they don't know how to respond because it doesn't sound like an insult. So I like that route better. So I like, how is that different from an imaginary friend? Like, so you don't just say imaginary friend. You just ask them in a very intellectual way. How is that different from an imaginary friend?
Yeah, so I wrote an article about that once a couple of years ago on Skeptics and Seekers, part of a blog post, and the question was, how does one love a person that is invisible? They can't talk to them, or they can't hear them talk back to them. You can't see them, and yet you have this love relationship with them. How does that happen? Because when I was a child, I loved a teddy bear or two, but they were there. At the very least, they didn't. I knew that the teddy bear did not love me, but I loved them in my 4-year-old brain. I can understand that, but God is invisible, And so I don't understand how you construct a relationship with an invisible person that can't, audibly speak to you.
Well, so like the recent studies show that when people hear from God, really they're just introspecting and hearing from themselves in the brain. And so I wouldn't say that that's quite accurate. I'd say that they do actually hear from God, but really what they're hearing is a reflection of their own intuitions. And so if there's a person very, very similar to you in a lot of ways, but you imagine them to be like, perfect, have perfect knowledge and perfect morality, it seems understandable that most people could fall in love with that person. Someone very, very similar, but to the extreme of being the perfect version of you. I can understand why Christians have the idea that they love their God.
Okay. All right. Atheists, you've been told. Christians, you're about to be told. Uh, Very quickly, we'll start with one that you might want to disagree with right up front. Stop making your arguments by using the Bible as an authority. Uh, the Bible said, according to Scripture. Let me stop you right there, Christian. I don't give a damn. There's nothing that you can say that follows those words that would be persuasive or authoritative to me in any way, shape, form, or fashion.
So I would caution doing that, because I think the real value of when Christians say that is they're showing what's important to them. And that is very valuable in a debate. You want to know what they care about, what they find significant. So Pine Creek Doug, great guy, pain in the butt, especially for Christians. He asks questions, leading questions like those three epistemology questions. What is it that convinced you? And if we found that was a problem, would that lower your confidence? And so when they bring up these facts, like what they find in the Bible, that's a big red flag of here's something they really care about. So if you really want to like attack their position, that's the thing you should attack. So if they think this is a meaningful position, then that's a very good way to start talking about, okay, who are the authors of the gospels, or what language were they written in? Could any of the gospels actually write Greek? And so I wouldn't want them to stop doing that. I want them to be able to bring up the things that are important to them, and especially when they're so easy to show how silly they are. uh, that's a great way to make them introspect about the value of their position. So if they think the Bible says, and say, okay, well, why should we trust the Bible? It's a great follow-up question. And that's when they start getting into the nitty-gritty of the writings and the manuscripts, and that's when they don't know anything about that. And we can demonstrate that we do know a lot about that. So I think it's valuable to listen to what they think is important, even though it's a terrible argument. It's never going to convince anybody, because it's still virtue signaling the things that are important to them.
Well, here's the thing: I can engage with Christians at the level of the Bible. Um, I know my Bible better than 98% of the Christians I'm ever going to talk to. So if you really want to get into a Bible fight with me, um, I will destroy you. I'll just put it that way. I don't even need to study. I know what it says, and I know much of the background there. So I can do that, and I will do that sometimes, especially on a project like Red Letters, where we're studying the teachings of Jesus. So, I'm all up in the Bible's face. Of course, the Bible. It makes sense to talk about the Bible in those cases, or if the conversation is about whether the Bible portrays a moral God or an immoral God. Well, it makes sense to appeal to the Bible for things like that. But when you are having a discussion about something like, say, abortion, and you point to the Bible to tell me what uh, David thought about, his sinfulness in his mother's womb, I you can stop talking. Just stop.
No, let them keep talking, because then you get to say, well, in the Bible, God aborted babies in this passage right here. So I don't know. It seems like the Bible actually supports abortion.
Sure, and I have done that. I just think it's the wrong strategy. Because I think it gives the Bible. If I win with the Bible, then I've still made the Bible of some importance. Whenever I engage that way, and what I really want Christians to understand is that whether I win the argument or whether you think you win the argument, it's irrelevant, because the problem is we're talking about a book that has no authority on these matters. I don't accept your authority. Maybe you can come out with a Bible verse that I didn't know was there, or that I'd forgotten was there, and you can really hit me with it. Wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter. And I think that's the thing that I'm trying to get at. See, for the Christian, they engage in that fight because they think that the weapon they're using does matter. And I might can successfully show that it doesn't matter. Maybe to some portion of the audience, I can successfully show that it doesn't matter. But for the Christians listening, they always think it matters. And the thing I really want them to know is, look, that doesn't matter. Your sword is made of paper, not iron.
But I think like the best way to demonstrate that is like with a compass. If you have a compass and you think the compass is an accurate compass, and then I come along and say, "Oh, you think that's an accurate compass and that's north? Well, let me shake it a little bit and see if it points in a different direction. Oh, it's pointing in a different direction. Let me shake it a little bit more, see if it points in the third direction. Oh, it's pointing in the third direction." And if you continue to shake it and show it can point in essentially any direction you want, the reliability of the compass becomes into question. And so I think that in order to get them to realize that the Bible isn't the best way to address an argument, the best way to do that is to use a Bible to support something that contradicts their position. And once you do that, then they're going to start cherry picking and say, well, that's that part, take it in context. And then you can just start parroting their words back to them whenever they bring something. No, you got to take that part in context, because I think you got the context wrong. And if you have greater knowledge of the Bible and the origins of the Bible, it's going to make them very uncomfortable to start talking about the Bible again, because they know they don't have the knowledge to back it up.
Yeah, with your compass analogy, I can just tell you, they say, yeah, look at how God keeps moving true north, because God can do that. So my compass is clearly showing us the truth. And while God is moving true north, yours is just pointing in one direction. So obviously yours is wrong. I've been a Christian, man. I know. I understand. Hey, Tom, are you a sinner?
Nope, I've never sinned. Never once.
Really?
Yep.
Huh. Well, you see, I feel the same way, but what do you feel when you're called a sinner? So for me, an insult has nothing to do with the word itself or with what the word might actually mean. To me, an insult is what the person means who's using it. That's really the only thing in communication that matters to me. What did you mean when you said that? And I understand what the Christian means when they say sin and sinner. And I find that insulting.
For me, like, I was diagnosed with high functioning autism, so insults and compliments have like no effect on me. They're about as emotionally effective as a lawn chair. So I don't know how I would respond. I don't feel the same way that most people do when people are insulting me. For me, it's just I feel nothing. I'm essentially just responding to the words as if I would respond to any other words. So I don't know how to relate to being offended to insults as much as other people do. That's something that's lost on me emotionally.
Well, let me be your emotional compass. It's offensive. So offensive may be something that you don't feel deeply either, but you can practice it. You can still feed back that is offensive, even if you don't feel some deep gut wrenching offense. Most of us, it's not something that we can control. When you are insulted and genuinely offended, it twists your stomach. It's there's a physical, visceral reaction to offense. And so this is partly why words are so important that we use. When I recognize the words that I use that create visceral responses in Christians that they cannot necessarily control. And this is one of these words that Christians use that creates a visceral response in me. And I don't fly off the handle every time I hear it, but I know what they mean. I know where it comes from, because for the Christian, if you die in your sins, you are going to hell. That's what sin is. It is the ultimate offense. It's not just that you told a little white lie over there without any consequences. There are eternal consequences to everything. And what you have done is greatly offended the God of the universe to such a degree that the only response to that is your destruction in hell, like Hitler. You are ultimately, eternally no better than Hitler or a pedophile priest if you are a sinner. That is what they mean. And so that is what I'm responding to. I understand that Christians have a hard time not calling people sinners, because for them, they believe that their imaginative, they believe that their God has commissioned them to go around telling people that they are in sin and to convince and convict them of that sin so that they might change. They believe that they are following the marching orders of their God, so they can't stop doing it.
I think you mentioned in your article, like, that if they need this threat of violence to have relevance, and if there's no threat of violence, then they are neutered essentially as a religion. Was that something from your article, I believe?
It is. It's for the next one. We can just jump right in there too, which is hell. Sin and hell kind of go together. Please do not tell me that I am going to hell. What do you know what hell is in your mind? Have you really thought about that? Have you really taken on board the image of hell that you yourself have, and to say to another being like yourself that this is the fate you are worthy of as you stand right now? If we all actually thought about that, I think it would kill a lot of conversation. I just don't want to talk to someone who envisions me burning in some type of torment or whatever. There are different hell views. I recognize that, but being in some kind of torment for eternity. And with someone like Dale, I don't say this disrespectfully. I've asked him about this a number of times. He looks forward to it. He doesn't believe in hell as a burning torment, but he does believe in hell as a torment. And he looks forward to sinners getting what they deserve. He will say this. He will say this publicly. He looks forward to you getting your just desserts. This is how they see us when they talk to us. And Christians need to change the way you see us, or you need to change the way you talk to us. Because if that's how you come across, that you think that I deserve this fate, and you look forward to God's justice being delivered upon all such people, we have nothing to talk about.
Yeah. So again, because of my autism, I feel very differently. I don't feel offended when someone says you deserve to burn in hell, or you deserve like the gas chamber or something. Like, I couldn't care less how they feel about me. For me, I kind of see it as more like an anthropologist. I'm here to listen to their viewpoints and what they believe, and I'm interested in engaging and seeing how I can make arguments and positions in response to those feelings. But I don't actually personally care what they think of me at all. But I think, that it may also have to do with my autism, because it's like I'm not really affected by what other people think in any respect. And so it's probably easier for me to not care if they insult me, or care if they think I'm a evil sinner, worse than a mass murderer or whatever. And so I definitely understand that if the goal is productive conversation, them saying those things to a regular human being who's like an atheist would be counterproductive, in the same way that an atheist calling them a magical sky daddy would be counterproductive to a productive conversation. But from my perspective, it's like, I wouldn't care. It makes no difference to me.
All right. Well, here's something that I know you do care about, because I listened to one of your debates recently in preparation for this conversation. It was when you were teamed up with Matt Dillahunty, and on the other side of you was Randall Rouser and the other guy.
Samuel Nassan.
There you go.
The other guy. Sorry,
his name recognition.
All Christians look alike. Yeah.
It's not as high as Randall Rouser. Okay. So, and I'm sure maybe some people thought that way about you. There was Matt Dillahunty and the other guy, but I happen to know you both, and I think that you were both equally capable. Whereas I think that Randall Rouser and Samuel were not equally capable, and I thought that was a little bit of a very strange pairing. Did you think that at all? I mean, maybe as someone who participated in the debate, maybe it's bad form if you were to say so.
So I like both of those guys, but they have very different approaches, and their approaches are not complementary in a single debate topic. So I think that if given the opportunity to present their own position, or someone who is agreed with their position, they do much better. But pairing people who have such drastically different views makes them look ridiculous when they're paired together.
Yeah, and Randall is such a dominant personality on the mic anyway. I'm sorry, Samuel just kind of looked like the other guy. That said, I've talked to Randall several times. I consider him a friend. I would love to have a conversation with Samuel. He has some interesting ideas that I would like to help him explore. Because I really feel like in a debate setting like the one that you guys were in, it's hard to explore one person's idea for very long and very deeply. That said,
just as a personal rant, 2v2s are completely like pointless. They're nothing but entertainment value to get the audience of each of the different person to watch. You get a higher viewership. There's no productive value of having a 2v2 conversation, none whatsoever.
It's good for the channel.
Yeah.
Yeah, my first appearance on Unbelievable was 2v2. So yeah, I completely concur. But one of the things that it's hard to say got your back up was when Randall accused you of scientism. That was one of the things you definitely wanted to come back on. Scientism. How do you feel when people accuse you of scientism? You maybe feel isn't the right word, but you definitely feel something.
Well, so I don't mind being that label. So like I'm totally fine with that label. I think it's a softball and an easy point to address. The things I hate are repeating myself and being talked over. Those two things. And I think the thing that pissed me off when Randall said that was he'd repeated that like 6 or 7 times during the debate, and I addressed it every single time. And that's, I think, the thing that really bothered me. But scientism, I'm totally fine with that label. I can do both routes and say, well, no, scientism is the position that knowledge is only attainable through scientific means, which nobody accepts. We accept you can think about things and come to knowledge. 1 + 1 = 2. You don't need science for that. Or I can take the position that empirical knowledge is the most reasonable basis, and so using science as the groundwork of the primary ways of knowledge is completely justifiable. So you can say, yeah, scientism is the most reasonable position. So either way, I'm happy with the label of scientism because it's a softball argument, easy to address. But the thing that pisses me off is repeating myself and getting talked over. Those are the two things I cannot stand. Those bother me greatly.
I almost talked over you there, so yeah, don't hit me. Um,
Banned.
so let me see if I can help you feel the insult that's really being hurled at you when someone accuses you of scientism, because they're not just making an observation about what they think, that the fact that you believe that science is the best option for knowing things about the universe. What they're really saying is you are dishonestly closed off to other possibilities and inquiries of knowledge about reality. That's what they're actually saying. So when they accuse you of scientism, they're accusing you of um, a dishonest exploration of truth, because you're only looking at this one thing over here and you refuse to look at all of the other things. So that's the thing that sets me off when I hear that word come up and hurled against me and against other Christians. That's what they're really trying to do, is paint you into that box. And
Other Christians?
I'm sorry, other atheists. You're the dishonest interlocutor. And so what I always try to ask Christians who bring that word up is, look, tell me what other avenues of inquiry, if science cannot inquire into the metaphysical, what methods can, and then show me how to access those methods so that I can inquire into it. So I don't mind actually taking on that label either. But for me, it's not a matter of my mind is closed off to other possibilities. It's that Christians refuse to tell me how to access them. And so the only one I know how to access, the only one I know about and that I know how to access, is science. And so if we're talking about proof for your God, that science is the only thing I've got. And if you're saying, well, science can't do it, then tell me how I can. And if you can't tell me, then we're back to science.
Yeah, I totally understand the sentiment. But again, I'm glad when Christians say that because it's something that many Christians believe. And so I'm glad to be given the opportunity to address it and present a more rational counterposition. So when Christians have that bias that they think that secular people are irrationally excluding certain kinds of evidence, like empiricism, scientism usually means that you're irrationally excluding the philosophy and the soft science stuff that indicates God, apparently. um, I tend to go back and say, I am happy to accept anything as evidence that can differentiate your imagination from reality. I don't care what it is, science, anything that can do that. So if you can provide anything that can do that, I will happily accept that as evidence of a God. Please feel free to at any time, go ahead. And so because I can counter that with a very easy to understand position that's very rational to accept, tends to make them look more irrational. But I really appreciate them bringing it up because it is a commonly held belief in Christianity, and I think that's something I like in a debate when they bring up something that's very common in the opposing position that I get to address and provide an alternative that's more rational, that demonstrates the intellectual acuity of my side when compared to theirs.
Okay. I thought you did that well, by the way, in that debate.
Thank you.
And I think a phrase that atheists should learn and say more often is to the effect, well, how do you distinguish the this thing that you're claiming that is metaphysical from imagination? You're not saying that you're just imagining it. What you're asking for is a way to help me distinguish it. because I don't know how you distinguish it, and I don't know how I would distinguish it. So that's a good thing, and I appreciate that. You did well in, at least in that section of the thing.
Wait a minute. Well, what section didn't I do well in? Come on. All right. We're going like boxing match time. Let's do this.
I thought it was great. I think the section that you didn't do well in were the sections you weren't talking in. I think that you deferred to Matt too much. You should have talked to Matt. So.
Yeah, that's another bad. I hate talking. So ironically, as you mentioned before, we are professional talkers. It's our job to talk. And ironically, I hate talking.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to clear my schedule, and we're gonna have to do some couch time on that one. So last one. Appeals to authority. Okay, Christians, please again stop it. So your Bible is an appeal to authority. The Bible says that's one. But there are other kinds of appeals to authority, such as, Dr. William Lane Craig said, or Dr. B said, or Dr. whatever theologian you want to be. He's not really a theologian. But when you appeal to some theologian, here's the thing: theology is a fake discipline. I'm sorry. A doctorate in theology is more useless than a degree in music. And you're talking to someone who went to college to get a degree in music. No, I didn't get that degree, but that's what I was there for: music theory and composition, songwriter, and musician. A degree in music is stupid. I'll just leave that to you. I'll just think about it for a little while. A degree in theology is way stupider. It's like a degree in unicorns. If I already don't believe in your God, you can't cite an expert in Godology for me. Why are you doing that? Why do I even need to address what one of your professional Godologists had to say? I don't care. So I mean, I don't even like to address these types of appeals. Now I do it for the entertainment value. It's there. I know who these guys are. I read them because I'm that kind of geek. I read the books, the articles, and so forth. So I'm aware of it. I just find it ridiculous. Why are we appealing that? And then by the same token, it's the Christians who want to try to use some prominent atheist against us when we're talking. Well, first of all, I'm not debating with that atheist. If I was, then maybe I'd bring it up. I'm debating with you. I don't have any prophets. I don't have any bishops. I don't have any creeds. I'm free of that. You can't use authority against me unless what we're talking about is some secular point. Like the number of people who have psychological difficulty after an abortion. That's something that you can appeal to an authority for. But any authority on Godology or atheology, I don't understand. Why are you doing that?
Yeah. So the one I hate the most is when I bring up the consensus of experts, and they say that's an appeal to authority fallacy, and it's not. So an appeal to authority fallacy is only when you appeal to a false authority of some kind, and so appealing to the actual consensus of experts, not an appeal to authority. But so I say most geologists say that the Earth is whatever 4.5 billion years old, and then they bring up something like most theologians believe in a God. Most theologians think that miracles are things in history, and that's the part where I'm exactly with you, where it's like, well, that's kind of the made up God field. Of course, they believe those things. That's not actually evidence. They're not actually experts in reality. They're not genuine experts in what actually happened in reality. They're experts in Bible studies, which is, as you said, kind of as useful as an expert in Harry Potter studies. Not the most informative thing when you're talking about reality. So yes, I can understand the silliness that ensues when people start to quote the authorities of theology, because it seems they confuse the fact that someone's an expert in the Bible, and they think that means they're also an expert in reality, which are two very different things.
Right. So, okay, let's get out of here. Let's talk about real quick on our way out the door, um, things that we can both sides do to make conversation better. I'm going to start with one that I don't have on the list.
Pay me more.
That, sure. Look, patreon.com/red letters. It's I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you. Because sometimes the conversation as a blood sport goes too far, and we can reel ourselves back in, and it's okay to be sorry that we offended someone, or maybe we did it on purpose, but we can still apologize. you know that shouldn't cost us anything, and that doesn't happen very frequently. So in that same debate that I mentioned, I will say this about Randall Rouser. Randall Rouser apologized for ascribing some idea to you that you didn't have. I thought that was good. A simple apology can go a long ways. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you, or I'm sorry, I misheard you. That can do so much in easing conversational tensions.
Oh yeah, for sure. Definitely. I think that politeness and genuine honesty and trying to clarify that you're not insulting someone and it wasn't intended as an insult, but you're trying to make an argument or want to hear their position on something that you think is a relevant example is definitely a way to like diffuse tensions in that case. Unless you're being like, well, I'm sorry that I called him a sky daddy, but
Okay. Speaking of knowing, I don't know. Okay. Can we just do that on Seth Andrews' show? He used to have this introduction. There was one person, he had this montage of people saying different things. One of the things that someone said, I don't know who the voice was. It was, but it was, I am a towering mountain of ignorance. something to that effect. Very funny, but also very useful to just be free for a moment and say, yeah, I don't know that one. In debates, neither side says a lot of I don't know in places where I think and I don't know would be better than making up some shit and plowing ahead. So that's when you know that the debate is not useful. And if it is, if people are hearing you say things that you are making up on the spot, and you know that you don't know what you're talking about, then it's worse than useful. It's harmful. And so, every now and then, maybe you just stop motoring along and say, you know what? I don't know. I gotta think about that. I don't know. Have you ever said I don't know? Because I can tell you, I very seldom say I don't know when I'm in a heated debate.
Yeah, actually. So, great example. Also, including another example of what you previously talked about, bringing up authorities. I was talking to a flat earther, Flurfs, and he brought up the authority of Neil deGrasse Tyson. Neil deGrasse Tyson says that you can't see the curvature of the Earth from, I forget, whatever the level of the height of the guy who did the space jump or spacewalk thing. And he brought up all these things about what all these authorities said, and I just said I don't care. I don't care what anything is said. And they asked me like, what do you think is the height where you can see the world, the height of the curvature? I was like, I don't know. Yes. What do you think the curvature there is? Like, I don't know. What do you think is the distance between these two cities? Like, I don't know. For every question he asked, I'm just like, I don't know. I don't care. I don't care about any of these things. They're irrelevant. So I'm quite used to saying I don't know in cases where there's technical details that I'm not interested in.
You were a towering mountain of ignorance. Good for you.
That is true.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend. I'm trying to practice, man. Here's one of my favorites. This one is one I don't say too often either, but I'm a fairly quick thinker, and that's probably my superpower and my downfall. You are an even quicker thinker than I am. I like listening to you take questions and debate. You're very fast, but not everyone is that quick of a thinker. And sometimes even quick thinkers just need to say, give me a chance to think about that a little bit more. Can we come back to that later? I don't have a good response right now. I know that the people supporting you are not cheering you on to hear you say, yeah, I want to give a more thoughtful response than the one that's on the tip of my tongue. But that would do such good for conversation. I think if both sides did more of that, because, we feel the pressure of having to say something when it's our turn to say something, when what we should really say, it may not even be that I don't know the answer. It may be that's a really complicated question. Let me come back to that when I can formulate a good answer.
Yes, that's very intellectually honest, very wise, very bad for viewership.
Okay. Empathy. I'm just going to skip right over that and go to the conclusion, which is really listen. So I mentioned being on Unbelievable a couple of times, and Justin
Rub
doesn't.
it in.
Oh,
Make me more jealess. All right, fine. I'll take it. I'll take it.
Write a letter to Justin. I mean, honestly,
I would appreciate that. Yes. Can I bribe you?
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
Go to his Patreon. Patreon at the Red Letter. Patreon.com// Red Letter. Is that right?
Yeah, that's it. Look, here's the bribe. I'll get you on Unbelievable, and you bring me on your show for a 2v2.
Yeah, that sounds great.
No,
it's gonna be the other guy and Randall Rouser versus you and me.
I like the other guy just to be there. And I thought, by the way, that he practiced so many of these things that I'm talking about as good conversation, but practicing good conversation when you're in a group with Randall, Matt, and Mr. Jump, you don't stand a chance.
Yeah.
So I am so sorry for him. And I was, but I thought that behavior wise, he was outstanding.
Yeah, he is a phenomenally nice guy, overly nice. Him and Sal Cordova are incredibly nice people, which does not do well in blood sport debates.
No. Look, I love talking to Randall. I love having him on my show, but Randall is not a nice guy. No one's going to mistake Randall for a nice guy. He's a bare knuckles fighter. We get along. All right. So really listen here. This is the key. And this is what I am trying to get at. In that debate, I wasn't sure if you were really listening to the other side or if you just didn't like talking or if you just didn't want to interrupt Matt. because Matt is not someone I would accuse of really listening. Now, I don't mean that as an insult as much. Matt has been doing this for so long. He knows the argument that they're going to make as soon as they start talking. He knows where it's going. He gets bored and he needs to cut it off. I get that way too, because I've been doing this for a long time, not on podcasts, but I've been talking to people both as a Christian and as atheist for a long time. I know where the arguments are going. I get it. So I just want to, okay, come on, get to the end. We know where the end is. Okay, here's the end that you're going to. Let me just rebut that. This is I'm guilty of this. Okay. But on the Unbelievable show, the key to winning the debate is to get the most talk time. Someone like Ken Ham can win every debate because he's not going to stop talking. He is not going to stop talking. He will get more talk time. It doesn't matter if he says things that you think are stupid. The other guy can never beat him because the other guy can never get a word in edgewise. William Lane Craig, a genuinely smart guy, a genuinely good debater, but he's going to control the mic. And you will never win because you won't get the talk time. So it really is whoever talks the most wins. And that's kind of the tragedy of internet debates. It's just that way. And what I am calling for is more listen time. And I'm calling myself to that. It's very difficult. I said in the write-up, we tend to listen only to the extent that we need to hear what they say so we can format our response. We give them enough rope to hang themselves with, and then we hang them. And that's not listening. And at the end of the day, that's going to end up with a fairly unproductive conversation. It's going to end up with Randall having to apologize for accusing you of something that you didn't say, because there's not enough listening in those types of formats. What say you?
Well, so while I typically would agree that most people get an advantage of having more talk time, again, I hate talking, so I'm the exact opposite. I think several people, Pine Creek and several others, like actually counted how many minutes I speak relative to the people who I have on. And it's like a 15-85 split. I speak like 15% of the time because I have no interest in speaking. So I like to let them just go, take all of the time in the world, because it means I don't have to spend time speaking. So I love it when they talk. But I still win the debate because I have a way of taking everything they said and phrasing it or framing it in such a way that I have a simpler position that's easier to understand, that I can contrast to theirs, which is really the key to, I think, winning debates. It's not about time. Time is like a crutch. The real key to winning debate is having a simpler, easier to understand position than your opponent. And so if you can express that even in like 5 seconds, you're going to win the debate every time. And it doesn't matter how much time they get, because the key is the ability for the people listening to understand and comprehend what you're saying simply and clearly. And I think that's really the key to winning the debate. And even if you spend like, what?
I was just going to say that's true on your show because you control the clock, and that's true in a Skeptics and Seekers format, because I tend to go until my guests just drop. I don't do time limits. I want to make sure the issue is thoroughly discussed. But on a show like Unbelievable, you don't control the clock, and the time goes really fast. It's super fast. So the point that you have crafted while listening to the other person, you may never get a chance to make. And so Justin simply may not come to you again in that section. And then when the next section comes in, we're talking about something else. And so internet debate is a little bit like that, because once again, it's a format where you don't control the clock. There usually is a time limit. And in a V2V thing, well, like it's this kind of 2v2 thing, that's pretty useless anyway. So it really does kind of depend on the format. If you and I were debating on a show that had a Unbelievable style format, I would beat you just because I talk a lot. So I promise you, talk time really does matter when you don't know whether you're going to get back in or not.
For sure. That makes a lot of sense. I can understand that.
So with that said, do you have you're live streaming this, right?
Yep. There are people in the chat, and they are saying lots of mean things as usual.
Chatty things, right? Where people pay you to, and then you read their stuff.
Yes, occasionally. I don't think I have any super chats though. Those are usually for the screamers. I have a debate with Kent Hovind tonight. I'll probably get a lot of super chats on those.
Okay. Well, clue me in, because I am not on your stream. What are some of your listeners saying? And please use the profanity with the spelling that they use. Don't cut anything out. Skeptics and Seekers.
BS. That's all I put. Just BS. There's one comment. Dude don't know Jack.
Please come back with some clarification on the BS.
Don't insult music. Vlad is very angry with you for insulting music. He's on Twitch.
Well, I'm a musician. I'm not insulting music. I'm insulting music degrees.
David is a splendid fellow. Lord Hovind doesn't deserve the attention.
Lord,
it's Lord, comma Hovind, but I just got rid of the comma, so Lord Hovind doesn't deserve attention.
Yeah, you see, this is great. I don't see well. If I could read comments while I was talking, that would be so much fun to me. I mean, insults, compliments, I don't care. I would just read it all. I would interact with all of it, but I can't. I would have to stop what I'm doing, get extremely close to the screen, take a long time to read it, and then I don't have any audience anymore. So I've always appreciated how seemingly easily you can just take what's flying by on the screen and interact with that.
It does help to have a 50-inch screen.
Clearly one of the things I am doing wrong. Anything else out there? Anything good from the commenters? Anything frivolous? Anything insulting? I'll take an insult.
Oh, there were plenty of them. I have not been checking for them. T-Jump ask him what his groundings are. James Earl asked you a question.
Yeah, that's fine. My groundings, let's see if I can understand what you mean there. Do you mean my moral grounding? My worldview? What do you think he means? I'll try to answer it.
Probably worldview, because normally I have Christians on, and that's usually what they're asking is about, like, do you have religious beliefs or something? I have no idea. Moral grounding, probably.
The answer is patreon.com/red letters. My worldview is I don't have one. This is going to piss whoever wrote this question. I'm sorry. I know this is going to piss you off. This pisses off everyone, no matter what side they're on. When I say this, I don't have a worldview, and they say everybody has a worldview. Well, then maybe we're defining worldview wrong, because I do not. In fact, I would say that if you have a worldview, it is one that is completely unique to you, and it should be one that is unique to you. So if you're asking me, am I a humanist? The answer would be no, I am not. There are a lot of things in humanism that I like. It's probably the closest thing to a formal worldview, to what I would have if you would call what I have a worldview. But ultimately, we shape and mold our views on the world over a long period of time. And we have very unique perspectives on the world. And so there is no name to whatever worldview I have. That would just be someone else's idea. If you're a Christian, your worldview is handed down to you from a book or a priest or something like that. And then if you go from Christianity to atheism, I hate that word, but just using it colloquially here, you go from Christianity to atheism, and then you just pick up humanism. You just picked up someone else's worldview again. You didn't learn the lesson ultimately that you should have learned, which is to look at the world and study the world and introspect and figure out who you are and what you think. And when you're done with that, that worldview doesn't have a name. No one else has that worldview. That's you. That's just you. And that is my grounding. It is my lifetime of experience and study and triumphs and setbacks. It is all of that rolled up into me. That's my grounding.
Bloviator says you're gish galloping.
What's that?
Bloviator, gish galloping is when you like jump from point to point to point without ever addressing the point or something like that.
Well, I tried to address the point. Is it moral grounding?
Bloviation alert. Now he's yelling at you for bloviating. Frank has a question. What does David think of Darth Dawkins?
I've never heard him.
Oh God. We need to introduce you to Darth Dawkins. We need to get Darth Dawkins on your show. That would be just glorious. So my most viewed top 2 videos, Darth Dawkins, in case you're interested.
Yeah, I've heard of him. I've never heard him. So
you have saved several of your brain cells at least.
Yeah. Yes to the bloviation thing, by the way. I never say in 2 words what I could say in 20.
Yes, I appreciate that. It saves me a lot of effort because they're watching you talk and I don't have to do any work, and so I get paid more.
I will say one thing about that. One of the reasons I learned to start doing that was for clarity. Yes, I could say fewer words, but I find that in conversations, especially about religion or politics or something that's really highly emotional, people don't always hear what you intend. And you might have a well-formed sentence and you said it and you thought you said it well and they didn't hear it. And so I find that sometimes it's helpful to say the thing and then say it in a different way and then say it in a different way and make sure that you have been understood, because also I'm not just talking to you, I'm talking to your audience, and there are probably 1,000 people in your audience and they hear things in different ways. So yeah, I use a lot of words to hopefully make sure that, at the very least, there's clarity in what I mean.
MK Rulik asked, T-Jump, how the hell are you? I'm okay. I got dumped like 3 or 4 months ago, so searching for a new girlfriend, but I had a cute lady friend go to the bar with me and wing woman for me, which was pretty cool. So doing okay. How are you doing, David?
I recently got hit by a van and I'm recovering from a broken leg.
Ouch. It's
Yeah.
Cool story though.
Yeah, no, it's I put it this way, I'm well enough to be talking to you, and if we had tried to do this a couple of weeks ago, I wouldn't have been.
So why did you attack a van? What did the van do to you?
Seemed like a good idea at the time. We grow and we learn, and now that's
David Johnson versus Pine Creek debate. More words are better.
Look, I love Pine Creek, but there is something that I would love to debate Pine Creek on. I've lost the strain of this sentence. I disagree profoundly with Pine Creek on the idea that words don't do harm. I believe that words do harm. And I believe that what Pine Creek, when he says things like that, is not taking into account our biology and our emotional makeup as humans. And, maybe Pine Creek is somewhere on an autistic scale where words don't affect him. But trust me, words affect people. They hurt. They can stop the brain for a few moments from functioning. They can cause depression if someone ruminates on the wrong words. There is a reason why it is illegal to tell someone who is depressed to kill themselves. You could actually be brought up on charges for murder or one of the various
manslaughter.
So yeah, words do absolutely matter, and we should have more, I think, rather than fewer protections in the law when it comes to what we say out loud.
So I don't like when I hear that, the context I think of is like criminal harm, like words don't constitute criminal or physical harm. I need to know more about the context of when Pine Creek said that to know what he was meaning. Because I mean, obviously words can do harm, emotional harm, but normally when people say that, it's about like when it constitutes some kind of a criminal defense or criminal harm in some way, in which case you can't like criminalize saying words on YouTube or something. So there are some contexts where I agree and some contexts where I disagree that words are harm.
I think it could be criminal though, depending on the situation. So for instance, if you told someone, very convincingly that their house was on fire and they ran out and they got in their car and they, sped home to save their cat, or their sleeping kids or what have you. And they get into an accident and they end up injured. Well, what caused that? It was a type of incitement. Well, guess what? We have laws on the books about incitement to riot. Incitement is words.
Well, I mean, I don't think Pine Creek meant literally no words could ever be harmful, or just was I don't know specifically what thing he said which you are referring to, so I can't really comment. But
It was during it was it was around the time when he had a breakup with one of the people that he used to partner with. I can't think of the name now, and I'm not going to promise that I'll send you a link because I won't. Because I won't even remember past this conversation. But
I'm just too lazy. Whenever I say I'm going to send people link, it's not going to happen just because I'm too lazy. Even if I remember, I'm like, nope, too much work.
Someone brought that some of those videos to me, and I once again I like Pine Creek a lot. I think he's a very sharp thinker. And
oh, was that that was he had on Robert Price talking about
yeah.
something controversial.
I also like Robert Price, and I'm very disappointed in Robert Price. so, um, so there you have it. Yeah, he did. It was pretty shocking to me to hear Pine Creek say some of the things that he said, because not that he was saying anything particularly offensive. I just think he was very wrong on a subject that's very sensitive, and there are a lot of people right now suffering due to other people's words. And I think it is patently obvious and easily demonstrable that words cause harm. And as such, I would go further than most people and say we should have more regulation and not less. We should be held more accountable for the words that we say when it affects other people, and not less. Because once again, you can say, well, they didn't have to act on it. They were a grown person. They could have done their own research or whatever. But I mean, what is advertising? Advertising is words that are used to persuade someone to act in a certain way. It's a heavily regulated industry. Why? Because we know that words cause harm.
So yeah, in that context, I think I don't think having the conversation is bad or would cause harm. I think it's important to have those conversations. So in that context, I probably would lean towards the Pine Creek thing, that having those kinds of conversations is probably shouldn't constitute harm.
Doesn't. I don't think there's anything wrong with having conversations about incendiary issues that we disagree on. But that's conversation in this context is the arena. It's the safe arena where we can talk about these things. It's kind of like having a racist on a show to debate racism. Now, I wouldn't do it, because I actually think that there are some conversations that we have, in fact, as a species, move beyond. We're done prosecuting racism, or at least we should be. We should at some point get to the point where we no longer have to entertain the question of whether a person of a certain ethnicity is inferior as a human to another person. So I refuse to give that conversation air. However, someone like Sam Harris, he doesn't mind having that conversation, and I don't think there's anything wrong with having that conversation. It was my choice not to do it, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that in the right arena. I do think there's something wrong with that, however, in other arenas, which is why we have hate crimes, which can take things that you said while committing a crime into account to add to the severity of the crime.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely would agree with that. Frank asked, would David ever be on the Atheist Experience? Does he like that type of format?
I love it. I'm that kind of asshole, man. I want to get on the phone in the worst kind of way with a Christian giving me their best shot. Bring it. Bring it.
Make me even more jealous because I haven't been on that show either.
Yeah, you'll get there before I will.
I doubt it. Matt doesn't like me, so probably not. Frank asked, What?
Coming on that debate.
Yeah, that was before the whole controversies things. So,
Okay.
but so Frank asked, does David believe street epistemology is effective?
No, I think it's a joke on both sides. I had, I think his name is Anthony
Magna Bosco?
had him on the show. It was either him or one of the people who I don't remember. I thought it was him, but yeah, I had a street epistemology on the show, and I told him pretty much as I'm telling you. I think that evangelism is bad on both sides, and we should do a lot less of getting into each other's faces, trying to convert them into versions of ourselves, and do more of appreciating our differences and learning how to befriend people who are not like us. And I'm just as annoyed if an atheist were to come up to me and try to spread the word of no God as I would be a Christian trying to spread the word of God. So I'm not really a friend of street epistemology.
Because I always thought of more of it like a method. Like, obviously, I don't think you should be proselytizing in the streets. That's a little weird.
Look at the name. It's street epistemology. I mean, you clearly headcanon this all the way out of its reality. It is literally in the streets talking to people and challenging their epistemology. No, those people, even if they talk to you, they're not out there to talk to you or think about these things. They're out there to get a gallon of milk and go home.
Oh yeah, that part I this is one of the things I don't like about Pine Creek is that he invites on lay people and then destroys their position because they know literally nothing about their position. He doesn't really talk to professors much. He finds it boring. So I definitely agree that targeting people in the streets who are not really prepared or intellectually in the space to have those kinds of conversations usually not very productive. But I would say that the methodology of street epistemology is actually really effective if they're in a space like you're invited on a show or something like this where they're intellectually prepared to have those kinds of conversations.
But if you're asking about the formal street epistemology methodology, I'm a big fan.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I would agree. Probably not the best to apply it to random people on the street, but I do like the process of the question asking. James Earl wanted you to answer the trolley problem. Do you know the trolley?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I love the trolley problem. Bring it on. So just to set it up, the trolley problem is there you're conducting a train or controlling a train in some way, and if you go straight, you'll kill 10 people, and if you veer off, you'll kill one person, but the person happens to be your mother or your wife or something like that. This is not a problem. This is not a problem. I will plow down the 10 people with a smile on my face. If the one person on the other track is my wife and you're one of the 10, I will plow you down. I will plow down the entire world, and it will just be me and my wife. Choo, choo. You bet. So, would you do anything different?
Depends how much I was being paid. I don't know. Like, which depends which family member. Also, if there was like specific family members on the one side, I'd like aim for them.
I don't think the trolley works that way.
So yeah, it's a guided heat-seeking trolley.
Yeah, look, I don't. Not only is my answer easy for me, I think in a given situation, it'd be easier for just about everyone else too, if they're being honest. See, I'm not a Christian anymore. I don't have to pretend that I love everybody. I don't. So, that's cool. So if I don't know you, and there's someone, maybe I don't love them per se, but I know them, and I just got to choose you or them, you better make peace with your maker. So I mean,
I think it's actually happened. I think there are actually legitimate cases where there's a train conductor and his kid was like on the tracks, and he had to like choose to divert the train to either kill his kid who was like under the tracks or to save the people's lives. So I think those are actually legitimate cases that have happened in history.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure that every conductor worth their salt would have saved their kid. And frankly, the conductor that would have killed the kid, I wouldn't hire them. They would be unhireable.
I think it's like,
what kind of person are you? You just ran over your kid, and you saved the lives of 100 strangers. Screw you.
hard to disagree. I think the sacrificing your kid to save the 100 is like slightly more moral, maybe a little like
You're Jehovah, whatever you say.
So, Vlad the Stoner asks, he's still angry at you for the music thing. So he says, I would like to know or understand why David thinks a music degree is not worth anything.
Sure, no problem. First of all, if you are a musician, you don't need a degree to be a musician. You just need talent. And if you've got the talent, you're in college to, get a degree to validate that you have talent. I think that's the wrong way to go. If you're going to be a studio musician, they don't care about your degree. They're not going to ask. The only thing that you can do with that degree is teach music. So, otherwise, if you are a musician and you have the goods, every place where you use your music, none of them are going to ask to see your degree. They're not going to, it's not even, there's no application to fill out, man. Can you play the
recording stopped?
Oh, there's a time limit on the recording. All right, guys, I'm probably in there. I think recording ended on his end. I don't think I did it. But oh well. We'll probably do another one some other time.